Hey everyone, this is D'Armond, the creator of ChartLogic. Welcome to ChartLogic 103, Variables. We got an introduction to variables as part of the previous course on building blocks. This will be a deeper dive into the particulars of how variables work. I won't go over the basics again here, so if you haven't seen the previous video yet, I recommend going back and at least watching the section on variables there. If you're ready to get logical, then let's get started. Here's where we are in the ChartLogic course. Variables are an important part of how ChartLogic works. In today's video, we are going to look at the variable space and how this relates to strategies and threads. We'll take a deeper look at the life cycle of variables and how conditions are setting their values. We'll talk about data types and the kinds of things you can do with variables to answer the question, why do I care about data types? And we'll look at each condition type again to talk about the data that it's returning as the result of its evaluation. All variables are stored in what I call the variable space. When you're writing a strategy, this variable space is part of the strategy. At first, there are no variables in this space, but as you add logic sets and conditions, any variables that are defined get added to the variable space. At this point, the variables have no values because there's no data coming into the strategy. The strategy is not active, but the variable exists, which allows you to do things like pick them from select lists in condition and action dialogues. Variables are stored with something called scope, which just means that they know which logic set they came from. A variable with a global scope can be accessed from any logic set. A variable that has its scope set to local can only be accessed by the logic set that it came from. If two different logic sets are setting a global variable with the same name, then they are writing to the same variable and will overwrite each other's values. Be sure that your global variable names are unique. When you activate a strategy, a complete copy of that strategy is created for any symbols that it has been configured to run with. This is called a thread. Now the logic sets are evaluating conditions, and when they get data, they set that data for the variable in the variable space. The variables now have values, and those values are specific to the symbol for this thread. It doesn't matter what chart ChartLogic is running on, all of the objects will only be seeing data that is for their thread's symbol. An object running in EURUSD will never see data from, say, $, for example. Threads are completely sandboxed from each other. We talked a little bit in the previous video about a condition's cycle and expiry. Let's look at this a little more closely. Each condition maintains its own value. This is not a variable in the variable space. This is intrinsic to the condition itself. When a logic set gets a new tick, it calls each of its conditions in their sequence order and gives them an opportunity to update. This is when a condition checks its expiry and cycle. If it is expired, it clears its data. And if it has a named variable, then it clears that variable data from the variable space. If it is a new cycle, then it has an opportunity to calculate new data. If it evaluates as true, then it stores that new data. And if it has a named variable, then it writes that value to the variable space. This is also the point at which it would reset the expiry counter. If it's not a new cycle, then it just returns the data it has, which may or may not contain a value. When it returns, it's either returning the previously calculated value, if it hasn't expired, the newly calculated value, if it's a new cycle and it passed its evaluation, or no data, if it expired and couldn't get new data, either because it's not a new cycle or it failed evaluation. When I say return data, this actually means two things. It means it returns either true or false, depending upon whether it has data, and it means making the data available for the logic set to pass along to the next condition in the sequence as the input variable. You can see from this little flowchart, a condition can evaluate as true and return data, even if it's a new cycle and it failed its calculation. This is what expiry means. Once it's true, it stays true until it expires. Every variable has a data type that determines the kind of data that it can represent, including the data returned from a condition. There are typical kinds of data types that you would expect, like integers, doubles, and strings. Double values also get a precision, which means how many numbers to the right of the decimal do you want to see. If you're setting a variable for something like an amount or a percent, then it's common to set the precision to 2. For price data on charts, this is more problematic because not all charts use the same precision, the same number of digits. This means you won't know what number to set for the precision until runtime, when the strategy is activated and attached to a symbol. In this case, you set the precision to -1. ChartLogic will substitute the correct precision at runtime. There is also a data type that is unique to MT4, the color data type. This allows for some special handling of color types, like the color picker dialog we saw in the previous video, and the ability to convert RGB values into colors. It's important to pay attention to data types because it can affect the kinds of things you're doing with variables. What are you doing with variables? Well, there are two different things you're doing. You're performing a comparison, or you're doing a calculation. Let's look at comparisons. These are less than, greater than, less than or equal to, greater than or equal to, equals, and not equals. Not all comparisons make sense for all data types. For Booleans, these are variables that represent whether something is true or false, like a variable that stores whether a candle is a bull. Usually you would just compare Booleans for equality, but if you do test whether one Boolean is greater than another, then true is greater than false. For date times, we're counting the number of seconds from a fixed point of time in the past, so more recent times are greater than older times. And for colors and strings, the only comparisons that make sense are for equality, that is, equal to or not equal to. If you ask whether one string is greater than another string or one color is less than another color, this really doesn't make sense. And don't even get me started on what it would mean to compare color to a date time or a price to a string. If you're comparing two different values, they really should be of the same data type. If ChartLogic can't figure it out, then it will try to convert the types to numeric data for the comparison. But if that fails, then it will compare them as strings, and there's no telling what you'll get. Be sure you know what your data types are. For mathematical operations, it's similar. Be sure that the two values being operated on are of the same data type and that they can undergo the operation that you're requesting. If you're performing calculations, they really should be of numeric data types. Don't ask me what true times yesterday means, or blue plus $20, or ADR minus false. ChartLogic will try to figure out what you mean, but it's quite easy to ask for something that doesn't make sense. Now let's look at each condition and talk about what its data type is. The account condition is returning data about your account. These are values of type double with a precision of 2. For example, balance is 500, drawdown is 20, or drawdown percent is 0.4. The candle condition returns various data types depending upon the data that you have selected. Most of these are doubles and have a precision of -1. Volume is an integer and time is a date time. Bull or bear candles are Boolean, either true or false. Also, be aware of the difference between the double values that represent prices and the ones that represent sizes. High, low, open, close, top, mid, and bottom, these are all prices. But top wick, bottom wick, size, and body are sizes, which are the difference between two prices. It wouldn't make sense to compare top wick with top or open with body because they're different kinds of things, even though they have the same data type. The indicator condition always returns double. An indicator might intend that a return value be treated like a different data type, but it is a constraint of MQL4 that it is actually a double. The key level condition is a double data type with a precision of -1. It is always representing price data. The price condition is the same. It's always a double with a precision of -1 representing price. The price that is returned is the target price, the price that it is looking for. If you want current price from a chart, then use the candle condition or the market data that you can get from the variable condition, which will be the subject of the next video. The price condition also behaves a little differently from other conditions. The price condition returns the target price when it is not true. As long as it has not yet reached its target price, it will maintain the target price in the variable that it's setting and return this value as its output. The set condition returns the value and data type of the last condition in the set to evaluate as true. If this is an AND set, and one of the conditions evaluates as false, then it will not return a value. If it is an OR condition and any one condition evaluates as true, then it will return the value of the last condition to evaluate as true. If no conditions are true, then it returns no value. If it is a NOT set, then it returns the value of the last condition that fails evaluation. Usually this means that it's returning no value because most conditions do not return a value when they test as false. But as we just saw, the price condition only returns its value when it's false. So if a price condition is the last condition in a NOT set and it evaluates as false, then the NOT condition will return as true and it will return the price condition's value. If this is a for set, then the set condition will return the value from the last condition in the set for the last loop where all conditions evaluated as true. I've got another video coming that will go over iterators in detail. So if that last sentence left you scratching your head, then hopefully it'll make more sense after we cover iterators. The time condition is returning the current time, but only when it passes evaluation, meaning only when the current day matches a selected day, and if a time is set, then that time is after the specified time and before it expires. I do not recommend using a time condition to get the current time though, because its return value depends on its cycle and expiry. If it's not its cycle and it hasn't expired, then it's returning the value from the last cycle when it calculated its value. If you want time variables, then either use the time field of a candle condition or check out the next video on the variable condition, which has some advanced support for date-time variables. The trade condition returns data about trades or positions. You select the data to be returned when it finds matching trades or positions, and the data type of its value depends upon the return field that you select. In the return row of the trade condition dialog, when you select a return value, the data type of that value is also displayed for your reference. Note that there is also a color field returned by the trade condition. This is a handy shortcut for when you want to set the color of some object on the screen, depending on whether your trade or position is in profit or in drawdown. That is, whether it has a positive or a negative value. In the chart logic inputs, you set the bull and bear colors. When a trade or position has a positive value, then the color field returns the bull color, and when a trade or a position has a negative value, then the color field returns the bear color. The variable condition lets you specify the data type, so it's returning whatever data type and value you have configured. If you select a double type, then you can also specify the precision for that value, or leave it as -1 to defer precision until the strategy is activated. This is a deceptively complex condition, and as I said on the previous slide, the next video in the course will be a deep dive on the hidden mysteries of the variable condition. This is the end of Chart Logic 103, Variables. I hope you have a deeper appreciation now for the different condition types, data types, and how Chart Logic is managing its variables. Thank you for watching. Chart Logic is available in the MQL5 market. If you liked this video, please give it a like to let me know that this is the kind of content you're interested in. And if you're so inclined, you can subscribe and click the notification icon to be notified when I post new videos. Leave a comment below to let me know if I made any mistakes or if there are any features you would like to see in future versions.